And we'll start with roll call. And Ms. Goodman, will you be taking?
I just sat down. 1 second.
Sure.
Ooh. Okay. Okay. Oh gosh, I just had my sheet. Okay. Pamela Corbett.
Here.
Leon McCullough.
Here.
Emmer James. Brittany Spees.
Present.
Kathy McLean. Michael Fraden.
Present.
Beverly Carter Levy. Tawana Roebuck. Theodore Chun.
Lana is here. But
I'm sorry, I'm present.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Annika. Annette. Okay.
That everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So by the way, for those of you who may not be aware, with Zoom, if you want to mute yourself, but you want to quickly chime in, you can just press your space bar and that should let you talk and be heard. You all probably know that, but maybe not. So let's start with, first I want to apologize for our last meeting. We got a late start, and I think I asked the question about, since Tony wasn't going to be able to make it, who the vice chair was. And I had completely forgotten that I had agreed to serve as vice chair. So there was a little bit of confusion on my part, and I apologize for that. But once prompted, I did remember. In fact, I think I did agree to do it, assuming that Michael would be able to be available. And he being such a good, this is Michael Riker, he's been a very good chair, very conscientious, and I felt pretty certain that he would be more than willing to serve. And so what I hadn't counted on was the fact that he had already served 2 terms. So I wasn't really paying close attention when somebody said, so will you do it, just in case. At any rate, I want to apologize for that. Let me start with that. Our second order of business then would be approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes such as they are?
Madam Vice Chair, while folks are looking at the minutes, let me just make note of the fact that you all are meeting virtually due to the governor's safer at home order, and that anybody have any questions, it'd be good if they raise their hand. And then of course, when there's an opportunity to take a vote, the secretary will call everybody by name and get their vote. All right.
Thank you. So any additions or amendments to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from our past meeting.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a second from Brittany?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have to go for
Roll call.
roll call? Okay. All right. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry. Pamela Corbett.
Yeah. Approve.
Leon McCullough.
Approve.
Emmer James. Brittany Spees.
Approve.
Kathy McLean. Michael Fraden.
Approve.
Beverly Carter Levy. Tawana Roebuck.
Approve.
Theodore Chun. Annika Annette.
Approve.
Okay.
All right. They are approved. Next we have from Captain Gomez. He's going to be sharing the reports. Everybody got those in the mail, I believe, as well as the email.
Good evening. So I'll start off by introducing myself. I know that we have some new members. So I'm Captain Manny Gomez. I'm the captain over the Professional Standards Division for the Police Department. We are the division that's charged with investigating citizen complaints as well as the final repository for all internal complaints. So I'll start off by reporting the second quarter complaints, the external, which are the citizen complaints. This past second quarter, we had a total of 3 complaints that were filed with our office, making a total of 5 allegations. Those 5 allegations remain open, and the allegations consisted of 4 violations of departmental directives and 1 abuse of position. Like I said, those remain open and they're still under investigation. As we transition over into the departmental reports, we reported 4 complaints for the second quarter, consisting of a total of 6 allegations. 2 of them were found to have been sustained and 4 remain under investigation. Those allegations consisted of conduct unbecoming, departmental directives, duty requirements, insubordination, conformance to laws, and finally, violation of operation of motor vehicles. And those were the statistics for the second quarter for both external citizen complaints and internal departmental complaints.
Okay, any questions for Captain Gomez? Yes, ma'am. Tawana.
Mr. Manning, thank you for your report, sir. I want to, maybe it's because I'm just sort of new and don't know, I would like to ask clarity. So on the departmental report, it has insufficient evidence to disprove allegations. So are there categories such as that throughout this document that we can refer back to these various areas? One being the incident occurred but was lawful and proper. And then it says sustained, not sustained, and unfound. So since those are pending, at some point, will those categories be applied to the concerns that we have departmentally?
Yes, so essentially those, what you're reading, the portion that says exonerated, sustained, not sustained, unfounded, and open, those are the categories that are assigned to a complaint or an allegation. And to the right, that little definition is giving you a little snippet as to what the actual closure means. If you look at the actual sheet itself, it gives you those tally marks for those violations that are exonerated, sustained, not sustained, and unfounded or withdrawn, which a citizen can withdraw a citizen complaint at any portion during the investigation. So yes, as we catch up with the reporting and the completion of these investigations, we will notate that in the respective quarter. Unfortunately, I think like we covered last time, some of these investigations are akin to a short novel. So I just read one yesterday that was about 130 pages long. As you can imagine, that's a very laborious process for the investigators to document and investigate and review body camera footage and all that's involved in an investigation. But to answer your question, those closures are assigned to the allegations, which are reported once the actual case is assigned a closure itself.
So on that chart to the right, sir, it indicates that currently there are 4 open. The previous quarter, there were 6 open. So what happened to the other 2? If you do the math. So
are you talking departmental?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're talking about the first quarter, ma'am?
First quarter, it said 6 were open. Now
Yes.
it says second quarter is 4 is open. So what happened to the other 2? We went from 6 to 4.
Right. So those are independent of quarter number 1. So you're combining those. So look from the top down where it says quarter number 2. And there was 2 that was closed as sustained, and then there's 4 that are open for a total of 6. So for quarter number 1, there was 5 that were sustained, and then there are 6 that are still open. So that gives you a total of 11. So the 2 you're going across, which is not the way that they're reported. They're reported downward.
So if they're reported downward, when will we hear the results of what the findings were for the first quarter?
When the investigation has come to a resolution and the investigators have assigned a closure and it's gone through the entire chain of command for them to review the investigation to ensure that they agree with the closures that are assigned to that investigation.
So if I look at first quarter, it says 11. Second quarter, it says 6.
Correct.
So what happened to the ones? So now they're shown sustained.
Right. So so those are independent within the quarter. So for the second quarter, there was a total of 6. There was a total of 4 complaints comprising 6 allegations. Of those 6 allegations, two were sustained and then 4 are still open.
There are 6 new allegations coming from those 4 new complaints in the second quarter. The first quarter, there were 5 complaints for a total of 11 allegations. And out of those 11 allegations, 5 were sustained and 6 are still open. So those numbers are different numbers. So you have a different set for the first quarter and a new set for the second quarter. So first quarter, if you look to the left of the departmental spreadsheet, the first quarter, there were 5 complaints, 5 separate complaints that had a total of 11 allegations. The second quarter, you had a total of 4 new complaints. Those 4 new complaints had a total of 6 allegations. So you don't add across, you add down.
So my question is, what was the outcome of the allegations?
For the first quarter of those 5 complaints, 11 allegations, 5 of those, the first quarter, were sustained. You see 5 in the first quarter?
Yes.
So 5 of those were sustained, which means the allegations are supported by the evidence, and 6 of those are still open. And once those open ones are closed, they will have a closure indicating exonerated, sustained, not sustained, unfounded. They will get a closure designation. They're just still open because they haven't completed the investigation and it hasn't finished going through the process.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. And it's the same, pretty much the same for the citizen complaints. You had 5 the first quarter for a total of 7 allegations, 3 complaints the second quarter, 3 separate complaints for a total of 5 allegations. Now, for the first quarter of those 5 complaints and 7 allegations, 1 was sustained and 3 are still open and 3 were unfounded. The second quarter, all of them are still open. They're still being investigated.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Captain Gomez? Our appreciation to you for the reports. We will probably have more questions for you as time goes on here, especially since we have some new folks and they may have some questions about the board itself. All right. Speaking of new members, we do have a new member, and it is Annika Perkins. And she is there looking very attractive and smiling on your screen. Welcome to you. Would you like to tell us?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Annika Annette. My government name is Jaquay Perkins, just in case people are wondering, like, why. Annika Annette is my, that's my personality wrapped up into one and, wrapped into my purpose as well. I'm a graduate of Winston-Salem, the city of Winston-Salem University, and I'm also a grassroots civic engagement coordinator for our organization, BRAP, which is a political party. So I'm just aspiring and appreciative to work with other individuals with different personalities on this board in solidarity to ensure justice and transparency through due process. So I'm just appreciative to be here.
Well, welcome. And maybe we could quickly go around and introduce ourselves to you as well. And so
Absolutely.
I am Pamela Corbett, and it turns out I'm a veteran, according to Tawana, on this board. On it for 3 years, I still feel pretty new to it. We meet, and every quarter it feels like I'm starting over again. I am a psychologist. I still am in practice. Most of what I do, while still in clinical practice, most of what I do is leadership assessment, development, and coaching. I do that both through my practice here in Winston as well as with the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. And that's it for me. Who'd like to go next?
I'm Charlene Gomes. I work with the City Attorney's Office. I am the recording secretary. And nice to meet you.
Thank you.
My name is, official name is Leon McCullough, but I am a preacher, go to Union Baptist Church, heavily involved with C2C, which is Corner to Corner Ministry, and also a graduate of A&T State University. Done so many different projects, so many, I'm not gonna even get in there because I'll be there all day. But anyway, that's my name.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Brittany Spears. I don't know if you guys can see me, but I'm not as appropriate as I would like to be right now. I am an assistant federal public defender for the Middle District of North Carolina. My office is in Winston-Salem. I have been practicing law since February of 2013. So almost, Jesus, I can't even count at this point, but I know it's been about 8 years. Prior to my federal practice, I worked for the State Public Defender's Office, and I have worked alongside Mr. Frayden, who I am suggesting go next. And it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm glad to be on the board, and you will thoroughly enjoy the work that's done with this board. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I guess that means I'm next. Thanks for the introduction, Brittany. My name is Mike Frayden. I'm a private attorney here in Winston-Salem. Been practicing about almost 14 years now. I do primarily criminal defense. I'm familiar with Brittany, as she and I used to work not in the same office, but alongside each other on a daily basis. But I practice solely here in Winston-Salem now, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, Annika. I am Tawana Wellman-Roebuck. In some audiences, I am Wellman, not a newlywed, but spent so many years as Wellman, a lot of people refer me to that name. I am the executive director of ESR, stands for Experiment in Self-Reliance. I have been there 22 years. Prior to that, I spent 15 years at United Way. I am a fundraiser, an administrator, a grants writer. I do some events planning. By personality, I'm fairly detail-oriented, so I want to apologize to the group for all of my questions. For me, things sort of line up as processes, so when I understand the process, I'm able to better be informed as well as be more engaged and hopefully be a good volunteer for this group. Welcome to the group, Annika. I'm fairly new as well. Thank you.
I'm Angela Carmen. I'm the city attorney. I've worked for the city for almost 33 years now. Welcome aboard. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you all so much. That I feel so special.
And my name is Keisha Red. I'm one of the assistant city attorneys, and I am the staff member assigned to the Citizens Police Review Board.
Yeah, who have we not heard from?
I think that's everybody.
Okay.
That's everyone.
All right. So welcome. And I would say if you have any questions or any concerns, you could reach out to me, but I'll probably have the same questions. So we can commiserate. So in terms of the nominating committee, Tawana, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. It was a pleasure to be a part of the nominating committee. We will continue to convene. We have members of this body that are on the nominating committee. One of the first tasks I had as a member of the committee, I am not the chairman, I am a member of the committee, and I volunteered to follow up with Pamela in regards to her leadership for this group. Pamela has graciously agreed to continue to be our vice chair, and perhaps in the future we could have more conversations about other members of this body to be chair, or we can continue to have conversation with Pamela as we work towards finding resolution around our officers. The expectation is that the nominating committee will reconvene closer to that time frame in October, so we can bring a slate of officers back to this group for vote in our October meeting. So Madam Vice Chair, that is the report for the nominating committee. I'll pause to see if there are members of my team that may have other comments. I know Michael is on that committee. Mike is on that committee, and seems like there's at least one other that I'm not recalling. So I'll pause to see if there's some things I've missed.
Brittany.
Brittany. Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome. I think that you covered everything. Thank you.
I would agree. Thank you very much as the unofficial chair of the nominating committee.
Thank you. I'm a member of the nominating committee.
I know the feeling. All right, so any questions, any comments, any volunteers? Okay, well.
One of the things, Madam Vice Chair, one of the things we talked about is looking at the members, their tenure as a part of the group. Oftentimes there's a great Bible verse minister that talks about novice. And so one of the things that we want to consider in terms of leadership for this group is to look at those that have tenure or veterans on the group potential as leaders. And so as we move forward in October, that's something that we will examine. And then of course, we'll be prepared to talk to others about potential taking a leadership role in this group. I also want to suggest, and this is just me personally, and probably because I don't know, re-examining what our subcommittees are. So another way to use the talents and gifts that we have on this group is looking at our bylaws to see what types of subcommittees could meet during the off time. We meet quarterly as a group, but perhaps there are some assignments or tasks that could occur as subcommittees as a part of this team. So that may be something that the nominating committee could chat about in November upon getting some guidance in terms of what our bylaws might state about subcommittees.
Sure.
May I say something else? I would like to be a part of one of the subcommittees, wherever they are, to get more involved with this board, to do community work. So if you know in any committees are looking for somebody else, just put my name in the hat.
Yes, sir.
Thank
We
you.
will certainly will take that into account. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Tawana, do you want to talk at all about what we briefly talked about in terms of understanding? One of the things in our conversation that you brought out, which I thought was very helpful, is the notion of meeting quarterly and how sometimes it can be difficult to really stay informed and stay abreast of what's going on. And my response to that was, well, we're not really a board of an agency or an organization. There really isn't much content for us to oversee as a board. And that kind of led to a more complete conversation about what kind of information how would we get better informed if we did? And I'm wondering if, Tawana, you want to talk about that, or Angela, if you want to speak to that, but maybe Tawana can kind of frame the conversation a little bit.
So Angela, if you allow me to frame the conversation that Pamela and I were having today, we acknowledge the fact that this group, it meets quarterly. And one of the findings that we have, certainly organizationally, and specifically I'm talking about nonprofit organizations, we sometimes find that there is a gap of information, engagement, involvement, and knowledge regarding the organization. Respectfully saying this is an advisory board, so I certainly don't have the same expectations that I would have as a full board. But sometimes members are not as engaged when they meet quarterly as they could be if there was more task or more involvement that could occur in the off time when they're not having their formal meeting, such as our Minister McCullough has expressed an interest to perhaps serving on a subcommittee. So one of the things that we talked about is how could this group be more engaged? And so in doing so, we broaden our conversation to find out if perhaps in the off time, there could be a presentation. Pamela and I both have participated and heard presentations now from the police chief. I heard the presentation at a Rotary Club meeting. And even I've heard the presentation from the Sheriff's Department. It is a very broad-based presentation that relates to recruitment strategies, nuances associated to the police department. One of the questions that Pamela and I brought up is behavioral management for the police department. How do we do stress relief for police officers and so forth? And perhaps there could be a way through a subcommittee, we could bring that to bear so that we could hear and be informed and be educated from the chief of police, or perhaps it's Mr. Manning's from the HR area, for us to learn how we provide stress management for our officers, how we recruit new officers. And this could be a task, perhaps in a subcommittee level, that we organize such a educational opportunity and then bring it to bear for the full group in one of our meetings. We want to be able to engage all of the personalities that we have on this group. We want to be able to engage the expertise that we have on this group. And so by doing so and having an active participation around subcommittees, we then would have tasks that could be reported back in our full group. So that's the conversation, that sometimes there's a gap time when people are not coming to meetings and not understanding exactly what all is going on. A great example is my questions that I had about that form. As I thought about it, Mr. Manning did a good job doing my orientation on what that chart meant. But apparently I didn't comprehend it in that moment. I apologize, Mr. Manning. So this is what we talked about today. How can we be more engaged and involved?
Sure. As you all know, the primary purpose of the CPRB is to review appeals and conduct hearings. But as in the past, the CPRB has received presentations from the police department personnel, for example, regarding pepper spray and regarding policies and procedures. So certainly that is an opportunity for the board to become better educated on policies and procedures and things that impact the police department. That certainly can be arranged, and certainly you can have a subcommittee to look at what type presentations might be warranted and bring that back to the full board to make a decision in terms of what should be presented to the board.
I think what Pamela and I were trying to say is that we want to bridge that gap during the time when we're not meeting. Mm-hmm. So that we can continue to have a sense of connectivity for us as a group.
And when you do that, you would have special meetings, either a special meeting of that subcommittee or a special meeting of the board to receive those presentations, which you can certainly do. You can have more meetings than the quarterly meetings, and more often than not, you do have those because sometimes the appeals come in between the quarterly meetings, and so you have to schedule a special meeting. So that's doable.
And also, perhaps, I'm sure it's in this wonderful information you gave us. I don't know what the subcommittees are. So one of the things that we could look at is, inform all of us. What are the subcommittees? If there's a way to engage or re-engage some of those committees, that would be helpful.
There are actually no formal subcommittees. There are no subcommittees spelled out in the bylaws and so forth. So that would be something new if you want to do it in the form of a subcommittee, as opposed to the full group looking at possible presentations during one of their meetings and coming up with a list and asking staff to make sure those presentations are brought forward. You can either do it as a group or decide to come up with a subcommittee to do it, but there are no formal subcommittees in the bylaws.
So if we're planning such educational sessions, and I believe we should try to do those periodically, perhaps there could be a subcommittee established to lay the groundwork or the framework for continuous education for us. And then as a big group, we get the education, but as a sideline, somebody else on a subcommittee plan it out so that we're not necessarily doing that type of legwork in a meeting. We could do some of that in a subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as next steps?
Are you asking me?
I am.
Well, I don't know if I have the answer to that. I would like to have an understanding from Mr. McCullough when he indicates subcommittees and community and so forth. I think I'd like to have him to describe what that means to him, perhaps. I also suggest that as small a group as we are, look at maybe 3 people volunteering to do some of the educational kinds of things and bring it back to our October meeting in terms of what we think are possibilities.
I would suggest the educational subcommittee because I do think that's more in line with the role of the Citizen Police Review Board. Because again, it is an advisory board to the Public Safety Committee, Council, and the City Manager. So keeping in mind that limited role, I think you have to be careful about branching out too far beyond that. But I think certainly educational programs in line with what you all do is appropriate. And having a subcommittee to come up with those, I think would be appropriate.
So Madam Chair, I suggest that perhaps we either receive volunteers today to see if a education planning committee could be developed in preparation perhaps for a update in October on what types of sessions we view necessary. I'm a big champion of around the Survey Monkeys to see if we can get feedback from the group in terms of what type of education we'd like to receive. Pamela, you and I talked about, the presentation from police chief in terms of our update around recruitment strategies, behavioral management, some of those kinds of things. Certainly that would be most helpful to us, but it would be good if we can get some feedback from others. I feel like I'm doing all the talking.
Well, how about some other thoughts? What are some of the thoughts that some of the rest of you have?
I have a thought, if I could chime in.
Please do.
I really love the concerns around subcommittees as far as continuing education, because I actually would like to be a volunteer. I know I really kind of thought about even saying anything because I know this is my first time being here, but there was a lot of things that were being raised by some of you that, kind of had my eyebrows going up. And I kind of want to be, well, not kind of, I actually want to be a volunteer to do continuing education about House Bill 165, which are a lot of policies that govern the Citizens Police Review Board, to be able to target exactly what we should be working towards to be effective in due process.
Okay, so you are volunteering to be on that subcommittee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Other thoughts, questions?
I would like to be a volunteer for that committee, the subcommittee also. And also, I think we're moving into doing a new thing. And it's time for the board to do something a little different, to be more discerning of the community, of what's going on. Because if we do that, there may be a way that we can stop a lot of this violence and stuff that's going on in the community. Workshops, some type of workshop. That's just my idea. Workshops that can help to find a reason why there's so much violence in the community. And I think we should be a part of that also. We the Citizen Review Board, we help with different things. Why not try to come up with some ideas to try to stop this stuff before it even happens?
That is certainly a wonderful idea. I'm just wondering if that falls under the purview of this advisory committee. Maybe you could speak to that, Angela.
It probably is a little beyond the scope of the advisory committee, but I will give it certainly some more thought. Don't want to respond hastily, but my initial thought is perhaps it is beyond the scope of the advisory committee, but I'll give it some thought.
Perhaps if I could provide some clarity on my thinking around education, I want to make sure that this group is informed about procedures and processes. I don't necessarily see this group being the deliverer of educational or workshops and so forth. I want to make sure this group is informed, was my intent in my recommendation. I certainly will volunteer to be on this committee as well. I'm hopeful that perhaps one of the staff can be a part of this effort as well to sort of keep us on track in terms of what our purpose is. That's really important.
Sure, Ms. Fred will certainly be available to assist as well as myself.
Good. But considering the size of this group, probably, and Ms. Pamela, I don't want to overstep my boundaries, probably 3. So we have Ms. Anika, Pastor McCullough, and myself. Mm-hmm. Could that be a good committee along with an appropriate staff person?
Yes, yes, indeed.
And I want to remind the 3 people that have just volunteered, including myself, that our focus and purpose is educating us and not necessarily being the driver for education external out into the community, but education related specifically to this body and to this group and I want us to remember and always remain focused on what our purpose is as a committee so that we also don't step outside of our boundaries.
Given that our Reverend McCullough and I are probably the most senior members of this group, but I'll have to admit that I still feel new all the time. But I will give you the benefit of what experience I have had. And that is that this committee is not very active. That is actually good news because if we're active, that means we are reviewing complaints that were not handled in a way that satisfied either an internal employee with the police department or a citizen. They have us that they can then come to if they disagree with what the outcomes are. So if we don't have anything to do, but to say grace over the minutes and that's it, that again, as I say, is good news. And frankly, that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 3 years. Reverend McCullough and I, except for we did have one small novel, as Captain Manning described, or Captain Gomez described, that we had to read. I mean, it literally was a stack of papers that we had to go through and discuss, review, and make recommendations. That took a long time. And there was a part of me that said, well, okay, for all the half hours that was the total that I had to spend coming to board meetings, that made up for it easily. So we may not have much to do, but if we do have something to do, we would be, I think, benefited if we could get some information, learn a little bit more about how things operate with the police department. You know, what supports them, what are they dealing with, how are they trained? And certainly when during that particular case, when there was a question, I forget now what it was, but we had to get additional clarification from the police department as to how they did something. And we made a recommendation to do it differently. I forget what that issue was. We probably could find it if it were of interest just to review it. But that's really what this board does or doesn't do. And thought it might be helpful just to provide that perspective. Any reaction to that?
I think your point is very well taken. Thank you.
I will say that you all will have a pretty sizable case to review or cases to review coming up. If not at your, it'll probably be at your October meeting. And with City Council now meeting starting next month in person, I suspect that October meeting may be in person as well. I envision, unless things change, the mayor rescinding his declaration of emergency and perhaps the governor as well. So just be prepared for a possible in-person meeting in October and a pretty hefty case or cases to review. I can't discuss the name in open session, but you all probably.
So where are we meeting back in City Hall where we were before with masks, or will you just let us know?
I'll let you all know.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
The one time that we met in person after COVID was at the Coliseum with microphones, and I was describing this to Tawana this morning. I think we were seated 20 feet apart or thereabouts, and we were in this cavernous room.
Yeah, it was convention center. It'll either be the convention center or City Hall, but I'll know better closer to the time.
Hopefully it'll be the City Hall because that would, well, hopefully.
It was a large room, and
Very large room. So other thoughts or questions about what Tawana and I are talking about? Captain Gomez, any thoughts about that yourself?
Yeah, so just basically parroting what Angela Carmen has stated. Realistically, the fact that you guys don't have cases is a testament to the job that the investigators do. We at the police department pride ourselves on holding our personnel accountable. We train, we tell everybody that we have the best trained police force out there, and that is something that we believe in our souls. And when we have an officer that steps or deviates from policy, we hold them accountable, whether that complaint comes internally or from a citizen. We provide the outcomes that are allowed by law to the citizens. And as they go through the complaint process, it's a very informative process. We provide literature and explanations to the citizens so that they can file their complaints. We provide them with guidance. And if they're unhappy with the results after the investigation has concluded, we provide them with the literature once again and the guidance so that they can reach your committee, the Citizens Police Review Board, which is obviously the recourse that they have when they're not satisfied with the investigation, the outcome of the investigation, and the findings that ultimately are approved by the chief of police. So the fact, again, that you guys have very limited reviews of cases speaks highly, I think, of our processes as a whole. And so that's pretty much it. Now, as far as the education piece and the education component, it certainly will help you guys as you guys review some of these cases for policies and procedures. Some of the use of force stuff, as Ms. Carmen alluded to earlier, we have made those presentations in the past, and we'll be more than willing to bring the appropriate personnel and provide presentations that are allowable. There's certain portions that are allowable for us to provide you guys with the information, and others, tactical considerations have to be given. But at any event, we are more than willing to provide the personnel to provide you guys with the training so you guys can familiarize yourselves with whatever processes that you guys have at hand or questions about.
Thank you. Other thoughts or questions about this particular topic?
I have a question for Captain Gomez. When you said that some things are allowable or not allowable, is that because of some evidence that is not public? Or in what case is certain things allowable and not allowable to disclose?
Yes, so that's dependent on public information laws. North Carolina public laws prohibit us sharing certain information. Policy and procedures, certain policies of our policies are public, and we release them to the public. The one consideration is that if it hinders some kind of tactical operation or the safety of the officers, sometimes we will not release that information for obvious reasons, because we don't need that information floating around. So those kind of considerations, but I assure you that when we have training or or review material to release. It's not done unilaterally by the police department. Most of the time we receive those requests. We either compose training or the releases, and then they get reviewed by other facets within the city, the attorney's office, and several different components through the police department. So it's not just one person or one division unilaterally making these decisions. So we ensure that the vested interest of the citizens that we serve ultimately is what we aim to please and ensure that you guys are informed to the extent that's allowable by law.
Okay. Let me just add that there are certain tactical procedures that are not available to the public, and because all presentations would be open to the public, those tactical procedures would not be discussed in public. Now, if you had a case that involved those tactical procedures, and keep in mind that all cases are reviewed in closed session, that information would be shared in closed session. But the presentations themselves that you all are talking about are going to be in open session. So they have to be careful not to disclose confidential police information regarding tactical procedures and so forth. So that's what he's primarily referring to.
Okay, excuse me, one more. I'll be done after this. I'm just trying to gain more clarity. Would that be depending on subpoena power? Like, does this board have subpoena power?
The board does not have subpoena power. The city council has asked the General Assembly several times for subpoena power for this board, and it has been denied each time. And a number of cities, including Charlotte and Durham, I believe, have asked for subpoena power, and more recently, Charlotte, and the General Assembly has denied that request.
Okay.
And all of the bills that were pending this go around, expanding the powers of citizen police review boards, did not make crossover, so they're basically dead for this session.
Okay.
And when I say crossover, that means cross from one house or one chamber to the other, so they are viable and remain viable for consideration. Okay. Many of the bills were introduced in the House side, and they did not cross over to the Senate, so they're not viable for further consideration.
Wow. Okay. Thank y'all.
Sure.
Good questions. Good answers. Other questions, other thoughts? Okay, well then the new business is our next meeting, which Angela will let us know about as to where, but it'll be October the 21st, 6 o'clock. And I spoke too soon when I said we could meet for half an hour. Sounds like we've got some work ahead of us.
So,
All right.
Madam Vice Chair, I would, as new business, I would like to ask if this body can create a letter and or a certificate to the retiring chair, Mr. Tony, to acknowledge his service to this group, as well as just be a testament to the vision and the opportunity that he provided this body. I do wish that we could send him something, a letter and a certificate framed from this body for his service.
I think the mayor's office, and I can double check, sends letters to all outgoing members. If you all want to send an additional letter, I think that's fine. But I believe the mayor's office usually handles that for outgoing members, but I'll double check.
If there's something specific to this group, since he was our chair,
okay,
yeah, is what I'm suggesting.
Would we also want to do that for Michael Riker, who also served for the last, he served as chair or vice chair the last 3 years, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, I did not know. But yes, I think that's a necessity for us.
Okay. My staff will be happy to work with the vice chair and prepare and such for you all's review. You want to review it at your October meeting, or you want us to circulate it before then for your approval?
I was actually thinking maybe if we could do it before then, and for approval just through our vice chair, I'm very comfortable with that. Just as long as we send something, in a timely manner.
Okay. Is that okay?
Is that okay with you, Pamela?
Sure enough, it is. Yeah. Okay, so anything else we need to be talking about, Angela, during this meeting today?
I don't think so. I think that's it, unless Ms. Red or Ms. Gomes.
She's shaking her head no, and
No, I was saying that was the only item under new business. Now, Ms. Annette, there will be a new member training that we will be working with you to schedule. However, we were trying to work with the mayor's office to determine if we could do that training with you and the new member who would be coming on to replace Mr. Burton, or if we needed to just move forward and do it with you and then do it when that member is approved. So as soon as we get an answer to that question, we'll be back in touch with you to get your schedule so we can set that up.
All righty, sounds great. Thank you.
Leon, any thoughts? Any questions? Well, you're on mute.
I always do that sometime, y'all. But I really, no questions at this time. I would like to pose a motion that if we finish with everything, that we be adjourned.
Okay, so moved. Do I hear a second? Or do we need?
I have one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Just for the benefit of the group, because I know some of the members are new, when that new member orientation training happens, if any of you all want to come and sit in and participate and review in the event that it's in person versus online, you're more than welcome to do that. You don't have to be a new member. And so if there are some things that you would like a refresher in or to avail yourself of, that is certainly something that you are available, that you are allowed to participate in as well. It's not just for the new members. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
So I make a motion that we adjourn at this time. If we do not have any more further business.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Tawana. And we are adjourned. See you all in October. Have a great rest of the summer.
Great, families. You did a wonderful job. Good job.
Excellent job.
Excellent job.